Dear Dharma friends and our practitioners, today is a Sunday, the 31st of August 2025. We continue with the topic, the habit. When we're talking about the habit is always interfere with our practice. It's always lead us to the circle of birth and death. Doesn't mean that we are afraid of habit. The main point here is to ask questions and raising doubts. Our patriarch said, practicing patriarch Zen has no secret. It's only rooted yourself in the circle of birth and death. Our habits always running after the elusive thinking in the mind. That's why the patriarch said that don't be afraid of the elusive thinking, but focus on the enlightenment. We must believe in our Buddha nature, believe in our own Buddha wisdom, so we can come back to our own Buddha nature. When we believe in our own Buddha nature, we will have the right view, so we don't get the fear of habit or the elusive thinking. Every day we practice and we always review these encouragement, and we encourage each other, the words from the Buddha and the patriarchs, to help us to do the practice with the right view, so we can overcome any challenges, any difficulties from the ignorance, and we get rid of all the habits of these elusive thinking, so we can in charge of our own life. So that is the topic of this week. I want to introduce to you, and if you have any questions or want to share your own experience, then go ahead. Yesterday, Kim In has a question, but we didn't have enough time, so you can ask a question now. Dear Master, when we practicing the Patriarch Zen, our habit is always there. But when we not asking the question clearly, the habits will be in charge of our behavior. But why when we practicing, we don't pay attention on our practice, but we still pay attention to our habits a lot? That is one of the questions. When we practicing for a while, we still not confident to practice this completely. We still have some feeling uneasy when we heard the sharing of experience from our Dharma friends. We don't have right decisions or a right vow in order to practice these methods effectively. Could you give us some words of encouragement? Both questions have the same meaning. In fact, the habit and the suffering are both from our ignorance, because we forgot our own Buddha nature. When we don't believe in our own Buddha nature, we forgot about our Buddha nature. We always facing outward and running after those discriminations. So the wanting to be enlightened is also the elusive thinking. There was one time that Fulona asked a Buddha why all sentient being has the Buddha nature, why we has that elusive thinking started and get it into this suffering life. The Buddha said, if there is why or there is a reason, then it's not elusive thinking. When it's elusive thinking, there's no why. It's just because you keep running after that why, that means you separate that from your own Buddha nature into two. When you attach yourself to the objective, then there is the subjective there to be in pair. So when you lose your own Buddha nature, then you have the suffering life there in pair. So because you don't believe in your own Buddha nature, your eyes see everything outside instead of seeing their own. That's why they establish all of these dharmas or all these knowledge, and those are the roots of the ignorance. Those are the circle of birth and death. When we have the knowledge but don't attach ourselves to the knowledge, which means there's no dualistic aspect of mind involving here. When there's still dualism, then there would be two. But when you wake up from the dream, which means everything that you're dreaming are not true. That's why the patriarch said that when you get enlightenment, it's just like normal. That's just like no enlightenment. It's just like when you get enlightenment, all the elusive thinking disappear. And what do we use that enlightenment for? So when we do the practice, we're using the wisdom, and the wisdom will help us to stop all those elusive thinking and realize our own Buddha nature. In order to do so, we use the applications, the applied wisdom, to get into the observation wisdom and go back to our Buddha nature wisdom. When we said that we study in the Patriot Zen, it doesn't mean that we follow the studying from outside, that we need to go from elementary to middle school to high school in that order. But in the Patriot Zen, it's just when you don't attach yourself to anything, any attachment, that means you finish your job. Don't think that why we have these habits, why we have this suffering, always interfere with us. It's just because you are the one that tied the knot. You must do it yourself to unknot that tie. If you don't want to be suffering, you need to stop all those karma that you created. When we practicing and you still have that what to ask for, what to achieve, what to fear of, then you won't be able to reach to the ultimate goal. The more you attach, the more you go in on the wrong path. That is the disease of all sentient beings. It's just because you don't have the belief in your own Buddha nature. When you have the belief in your own Buddha nature, then your practice will go toward that goal. Our practice, we always have that elusive thinking. What we ask for, what we achieve, we want to be enlightened, and those wanting is a problem. When we don't believe in your own Buddha nature, then you still want to achieve something. But when you fully believe in your own Buddha nature, then there's a Buddha nature for you to discover. You have the doubt continuously, then the king of hell won't be able to see you already. So the doubt is the cause, and the enlightenment is the effect. There's no more wanting, you just doing. So for all practitioners, we need to consolidate that belief in your own Buddha nature in all times, all situations. We must do so. If we don't have the Buddha, the patriarchs, or the master, the experienced ones, we won't be able to overcome these challenges the challenges of the ignorance and the habit. We'll live with them just like our relative. That's why it's hard to overcome these ignorance or the habit. It's hard to believe in your own Buddha nature. It's hard to go back to the stream of practice. That's why everything becomes so difficult. Even though we've been practicing for a while, but we still having these fear, something that we ask for, something that we want to achieve. Those are the interference. When you do the practice, you only focus on the doubt. You want to prolong the doubt and keep on doing so. Don't stop. Just do it. So both of the questions are the same. Why we are practicing for a while and we still standing at one spot and we not progressing, and why our habit always there and interfere with our practice. So both are the same. One is talking about the elusive thinking. One is talking about the habit. Both are the same. Is that understandable? Yes. Thank you for your words. Kim Yến again. I'd like to ask my experience in practice. When we practice, our mind started to have the thinking of a achievement, and we understand the words from the patriarchs, the Buddha or the master, and we try to come back and ask the questions stronger. We understand those thinking, the achievement are just the stealing mind that's going on, and we just going back and forth on this, and it's also interfere with our practice. Could you give us some word of encouragement on this? Any thinking going in your mind or any images from outside or inside, just keep asking the questions and raising doubt. The sadness, the happiness, good or bad, always come back to asking questions and raising doubt. When we facing with the impermanence of life, we feel frustrated before when we don't know about the practice. When we see these, we see a good image, we feel happy, and we see something bad, then we feel sadness. It's just like when you have the feeling as a younger person, or when you get older, your thinking changing. These habits, it's just habit. It's not a good habit, a bad habit. When we still have that discriminations, then there's nothing else that we can do. We cannot just close our eyes or close our ears in order to not seeing or not hearing these. We just need to go back to asking questions and raising doubt, and that is a way to go back to your stream of practice. You don't want to keep the image that you see or want to get rid of what you see. You go back to the practice. Let your mind in that practice and leave those thinking alone. How can you do so? Just asking questions and raising doubt. Don't come up with any thinking or following any thinking. When we practicing asking questions and raising doubt, that's just like a beginning step that we will go toward the wisdom. And when we make a vow, the Bodhi vow to practice, we already get into the mind of non-permanence, a non-self. When we in the wisdom, the self, the Buddha nature wisdom, there's no more self. It's not based on what we're thinking. but it's already there. When you said that you have no self, which means you already had the self. Don't let your thinking or your mind interfere with your practice. When you do so, which means you're practicing the bodhisattva actions already. When you make a body vows to practice, and you still have what we ask for, what we achieve, what we fear of, which means we still not go into that wisdom yet. When we go into the practice of the 6 levels of the Mahayana branch, we still need to practice. Everything needs to go back to the practice. Our mind has a direct way and indirect way to cultivate. That's why the Buddha has several means to help us to practice, and depends on the practice that we're doing, we need to follow that directions and keep on going. Don't be afraid that you're gonna lose anything or you gain anything. Just practice until you recognize your own self, your own Buddha nature. So based on the right Dharma, we always focus on the practice. That's why you get encouraged to go back to the practice, asking questions and raising doubt. Don't be afraid of anything, even the habit. Don't attach yourself to having the habit or not having the habit. Those are 2. Just like the Buddha said that when you make a bodhi vows, it's just like you climbing up the mountain. You need to keep on climbing. Don't just stand at one spot until you see your own Buddha nature, until you reach the peak of that mountain. You need to go back to your own Buddha nature, believe in it, and continue to practice. When you have the 100% of believing, then you have 100% of reaching your goal. All of those knowledge, all those understanding, don't attach to them. Just go back to the practice. Is that understandable? Yes, thank you for your words. Pháp Hạnh. What is the meaning of right view? What is the meanings of the open eyes in practicing? So the right view and the opening eyes in practicing depends on the situations. So in the sutra, depends on the situation, the Buddha will use different way of explanations. Depends on the means and depends on the person asking the questions. Buddha gonna give different means to explain about the situations. So the practitioners can follow, believe in their own Buddha nature, and go back to the practice. So the indirect way to practice, the 5 levels of human being. Usually the Buddha will explain about a good karma and the bad karma and direct them back to the practice. But when you go into the Theravada or the Mahayana, the Buddha will use different ways of explanations, just like the impermanence or the permanence of life, the circle of birth and death, and direct the practitioner the way to get rid of the circle of birth and death, how to get to the liberation of your own mind. So in the Theravada, the Buddha talking about the circle of birth and death and the nirvana, and in the middle way of the Theravada, the Buddha explained about the 12 conditions to get rid of the ignorance, one thought of ignorance, in order to get back to your own Buddha nature. But when the Buddha talked about the Mahayana branch, then the Buddha said that you have to go to the roots of all ignorance and destroy that roots. That is the way that you reach the Bodhisattva level. However, the Bodhisattva still attach themselves to the emptiness. So when you go to the ultimate goal, the Patriarch Zen, everything will be the same. Nothing are different. Everything go back to the no attachment at all. And that is a right view that we use in order to reach different goals. So depends on different levels, different situations, the Buddha using the means accordingly. When we still attach ourselves to the self, that is ignorance, we need to get rid of that. But in here, when we're practicing the Patriarch Zen, the right view is also the open eyes of wisdom. When we have no attachments, which means we need to do the practice continuously and diligently. And both seem like different, right view and open eyes of practice. It just depends on the levels of practicing the Buddha, the Patriarch, using different means in order to explain, to encourage us to go back to the practice so we can get to our ultimate goal someday. Thank you for your words. Tâm, go ahead. It's almost running out of time. I will ask the question later. Let's go ahead and just ask. I had a dream that when I'm doing the sitting meditations, I suddenly realized what is the entering to the stream of practicing, but my mind said that it's really hard to describe the entering of practicing. And when I open my eyes, it's a times of morning practicing. So every time I have a dream and I get out of the dream, it's a time of practicing in the morning. It feels like when I'm sleeping, I had these dreams and I feel a little bit weird. Why I am practicing in my dream and I realize something, and then at the end of that dream, that's a beginning of the practice in the morning. Is that because I'm thinking about the entering of the stream of practicing that make up the habit and that make me having these dreams? Could you give us some words of explanations? The words from a Buddha entering the stream of practicing, that is the means, the teaching that the Buddha teach Quán Âm Bodhisattva to practice as a person who really believe in the Buddha nature. When they got the teaching from the Buddha or the master, they just believe in that practice right away and start the practice and continue to practice right away. So that's why for the patriot Zen practitioners, when they listen to the Dharma talk, they use them as a reminder to practice. And we realize that the practice is what we need to go back. This is why the patriots remind us that it doesn't matter what's going on. If you're having the questions, not having a questions, having doubt, not having doubt, have a thoughts, not having a thoughts, you still have that right view to go back to your practice. The right view is to detach yourself from all the thinkings. That's the right way. But if you still attach yourself to something, which means you're going on the wrong path. When you listen to the Buddha words or the patriot words, you realize the meanings behind that. But if you use the right view to go back to your practice after you realize something, then that's the right path of practicing. But if you attach to them, then you forget about the practice, then it's not the right way. So during your sleep or when you awakened, always put your practice as a priority. Just be normal in all situations. When you're having that practice other times, which means you rooted yourself in the circle of birth and death already. Anything going on in this world, good or bad, increasing, decreasing, anything, just go back to the practice. And that means entering the circle, entering the stream of practicing. So in your dream, you feel like you understand the entering the stream of practicing. And when you awaken, that's the morning times of practicing. And that is the collective mind that you had when you're doing the practice. We having this wisdom, just like we holding on the saber of wisdom. Anything going on in our mind, we will cut them off completely. And that is the practice that we are doing here. Is that understandable? Yes. Thank you for your words.